Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. I'm Jonathan, your host. This is the RedBeard Outdoors podcast. We've got Ian Wendt on the podcast, and you guys might know him from Patriot Gear. He is the owner, founder of Patriot Gear, but also he has his own podcast. They dive into some pretty heavy topics, actually. And I'll just say I started following Ian. I saw him through the first Phorm stuff initially, and then he's got the worst RBF, I think, of any dude I know. Because I'm usually not afraid of saying hi to people in the airport, but it looked like he had a bad day when I saw him. So I kind of just shot him a message. But since then, again, just been following podcasts and everything. I wanted to bring him on. He's a dad. He lives up here in Idaho area-ish. And just wanted to bring him on to talk about entrepreneurship, Patriot Gear, what it means to be a patriot in his mind, rather than just flying around flags and claiming you're a redneck patriot, but what it really means and to Ian and his family and why he started the brand. So with that being said, Ian, for people that don't know who you are, who are you?
Yeah. So let me just say first, there's 3 places where people say that I'm I look the most like unapproachable. And it's really funny because it's literally the airport, it's church, and it's the gym. And the reality is, because I got things to do, man. It's not, and just so anybody that's listening right now that might be like a follower or something, if you do see me, you can stop me. I promise I'm not going to bite your head off, even if I look like I might. I'm always down to meet people. It's awesome to be able to have a platform where people recognize you and I'm able to meet you in person, But yeah, man, like in those places at the gym, like I'm lifting and I'm dialed. Right at church, we're worshiping. We don't want to talk.
We're chasing kids,
day, right? And then airport, man. I got a mission: get to that gate and freaking dial. Just get dialed. So Anyway, thanks for having me on, dude. I'm excited. And who am I? I'm trying to figure that out still, man. I'm a guy that owns a clothing company and talks a lot of crap on the internet. That's kind of what I've come up with at this point. But no, I've been in sales. So I was in sales and marketing for a little over 10 years, just a little background. I knocked doors. I sold satellite TV door to door for 6 years. And then I managed a team for 1 year. And then it got to a point where I was really good at knocking doors. Like, not to toot my own horn, but I was really freaking good at knocking doors. I was selling people. I had a nickname. My nickname was Primetime because I would go out for like 4 or 5 and knock for like 3 or 4 hours, and I would smash everybody. I would sell the first house and pretty much every house I knocked, and that's not. I'm not exaggerating. Like you can ask anybody from the industry from back
I call
then.
that the ginger juju.
It might be, dude. It might be. But yeah, like, so that's kind of my history. And then I got to a point where I was like, I hate knocking, even though I was really good at it. I hated every minute of it. I had to force myself to do it again and again every summer. It's part of what people call summer sales. Now summer sales have kind of become like a year-long thing, but at the time it was called summer sales because what these companies would do is they would pick people out of colleges and they would have them go out and sell products for 4 to 5 months, and you would make a ridiculous amount of money and then not have to work for the next, 7 to 8. And so I did that for a long time. And then it got to a point where I absolutely hated it. But the industry itself was like unbeatable. I mean, being in your early 20s and being able to make close to $200,000 a year or more, right? That's a conservative amount of money for somebody that's doing well.
Mm-hmm.
Some years was $300,000-400,000, right? And you're making it in a few months. It was just unbeatable. And then on top of that, you're traveling all over the world. Like we would go all over the world, different trips, all expenses paid. You live a life that kind of, it almost like doesn't feel real. And it's like an alternate reality for most people that age. And I was blessed enough to come from a family where my dad is an incredible salesperson. And I picked up a lot of the habits and the traits that he had, and I was able to do it and do it really well from, just right out of the gate. I mean, I think my first day I ever knocked, I know. The first day I ever knocked, I was trained for like 30 minutes, and then I sold the first 3 doors I knocked. And so from then on, it was like, all right, this is something, right? But again, I hated knocking doors, but I knew that I wanted to stay in the industry. And so my 8th year, I decided I was going to figure out a way to get an executive position without having a network, which in the door-to-door industry is kind of unheard of. Like, you don't become an executive or a higher up unless you have a massive group of people underneath you that justifies the ability to have that position, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I went to at the time the COO, and I said, hey, I was really good friends with the COO and the CEO. But I went to him and I said, hey, look, I'm worth way more than, 300 or 400 accounts a year. I can teach every single one of your reps how to do what I do. And, talk is cheap. So at the time he was like, that sounds cool, but like, prove it, right? Like, there's no position. Because what I basically said was put me in charge of training, make me the director of training at the time. Right. And because there was none. Anyway, he's like, that sounds great, and go prove it, and then we'll see what happens. Right. And so I was like, all right, challenge accepted. So I went out that summer, and that was the first summer I didn't knock for myself. And instead I traveled around to every single office in the country in my car. I put 70,000 miles on my car that summer. And because I wasn't knocking myself, I wasn't making personal sales this year. So I literally, and people are going to be like, how? But I overdrafted my bank account like 7 times that summer. Right.
Yep.
And it's simply because the years prior, all the money I made, I spent because I was an idiot. And then that summer, like, I wasn't making any personal money because I was knocking with other reps and I was helping them get sales. And so it was theirs. I wasn't actually generating any commission myself. So I had to start getting, kind of strategic about it. And I started to not only train reps, but I started to train the leaders. And I started to teach them how to run what we called correlation meetings, which was basically like the hype meeting that you would have every morning before they went out and knocked. I was really good at those too. And so I was helping these guys figure out how to do that. And they were paying me to come to their office at that point and hype their teams up and double their sales and triple their sales and knock with their guys and knock with their leaders and basically do what I wanted to do. Right. I did that for about 2.5 months, and I kept track of it. I literally have, 1 second. Let me see if I. So I literally still have this binder, and I kept track of every single office and every single rep that I knocked with. And I kept track of their metrics and their sales numbers. And I basically kept track of it 30 days before I got there and 30 days after I left. And then I started having these guys fill out like surveys, like paper surveys. I had the leaders fill them out and I had the reps fill them out, rate me, and leave any positive feedback or negative feedback or whatever. I literally just gave it to him and said, do this anonymously. And then all of those I sent to the COO via email, metaphorically slipping them under his door. Right.
Yeah.
And sure enough, after about 2.5 months and like some insane numbers and crazy results that I was getting with these offices that were doing nothing. Right.
Right.
He reached out and he said, all right, you obviously weren't kidding. You know what you're doing. Come in and tell us what it is. And so I did. I went in, I prepared a PowerPoint, and I presented the PowerPoint to the entire executive team. And I said, put me in charge of not only training your reps, but I will build the platform that you use to train the reps and train the managers and leaders. And then at one point, it's going to get to a point where it's just on autopilot, right? And then help me. And then I will build a team that I can run as the training team, right? So long story short, that's what I did. And for the next, let's see, this was year 7. So for the next 2 years, I ran the training team. I built the training platform from the ground up, all the materials. I was in charge of basically all creation and implementation for the sales training and the leadership training of the company. And then in 2000, so this would have been, let's see, my timing is going to be so off, but I think it was like, I want to say it was like 2016. This was year 9. I was also very, very active on social media. I always have been, but I was that guy, dude. Like before people actually knew who I was the guy that you would get on like Snapchat, because that's what was big at the time. And there would just be 100 dots for my story, and you'd be like, "F this, dude. I'm not watching this guy's story." Like I was posting everything. I was constantly sharing my story and building my personal brand long before it was ever a thing to do, right? And my fellow executives knew that, and they were like, Ian knows something about marketing too, because I was one of the only ones in the entire company that was like very well known, not only in the company but in the industry as a whole, because I had done so much to build my personal brand. I'd been on like the Dropping Bombs podcast a couple times with Brad Lee, and I'd been on other bigger podcasts, and like I was a pretty well known name. I didn't have a ton of followers at the time. I think I had like maybe 11,000. But for somebody who was just a door-to-door salesperson, like that was a pretty good following. Anyway, so it got to a point where they were rebranding the company, and they were trying to figure out how to grow the presence of the company itself. And so they reached out to me and they said, "Hey, can you help us with the social media and the marketing as well?" And I said, that was what my degree in. So I graduated with a degree in marketing and business and marketing, I guess the other way around. And so I was like, I can try. Let's see what we can do, right? And so then from that point on, I was not only in charge of the sales training, but I was also in charge of all the marketing. And that was everything. That was social media, that was events, that was apparel, that was everything. And I did that for the next couple of years. And then 2020 rolled around. And at this point in time, I had actually stepped away from the sales side from the satellite sales side of things. I was still kind of involved, but not so much, because everything was kind of on autopilot. The rebrand was done. All that kind of stuff was done. And I basically stepped into a position as the CMO for the medical arm of the business that the CEO had started. And it was a drug-free pain patch. Nonetheless, like crazy. We can go into that if you want, but it literally worked. It would take people's pain away, and it was just a patch. Anyway, so I was in charge of that for a little while, and just trying to figure out how to like get that off the ground. But I felt very much like a round peg in a square hole, because I was trying to use social media and the things that I knew how to do as far as marketing goes to build this brand that was all centered around, quite frankly, elderly people and pain. And I was like, elderly people don't use social media. Like, this isn't my wheelhouse, right? So I was kind of already feeling like that. But then 2020 rolled around, and all the craziness with COVID and BLM and the riots and all that took place. We don't have to get super political, but long story short, I saw that for what it was, because in addition to all of this, I've also been a closet conspiracy theorist, right? Like my closest friends and family knew that about me.
Yeah.
Ever since 9/11, I was always somebody who liked to deep dive into conspiracies. And like, when the family got together, it was like, oh, here comes Ian with his next conspiracy, right? Nobody really knew that about me though, because it wasn't something that I shared a lot. And so when this happened, I was like, I know what this is. I can see it for what it is. And I got loud. And straight up, dude, I started making videos. And at the time, I fully knew that there was a chance that I was burning everything I had built to the ground by doing this. But I could not stay silent. And my wife told me I was crazy. A lot of people told me I was crazy. And I kept on asking myself, if I know this to be true, and I know that I should say something and speak up, and I don't, what am I going to tell my little boy? Because we had just had my first kid, my little boy. And what would I tell him 10 years from then if I didn't speak up and I knew I should? And so I did. And instead of burning everything to the ground, it was the exact opposite. It freaking catapulted. It just took off, because I realized, I didn't know this, but I realized that a lot of people, number one, they had no clue what was actually going on. Everybody at this point was garbling up the mainstream media like it was fact. And opening people's eyes to this was like an actual revelation for most people. And I didn't realize this. I thought people knew. I figured that everybody knew that the mainstream media and everything else was just a propaganda machine, but they didn't. And on top of that, I also realized that a lot more people felt the way and thought the way that I did, and wanted to feel like they were accepted. and they wanted to find a place where they felt like their beliefs were okay to have. And so I started to use my social media platform. Once it really started to blow up, I was like, okay, I know what to do with this, right? Because I've done this for so long. Now is my time to actually build this influence and create what I've been trying to create for so long and actually have an impact on people. And so I started to create these highlights on Instagram, these conspiracy theory highlights, where I would basically make like, I would match metal, because I'm a metalhead, with these like deep dive stories. And it got to a point, dude, where people were actually having date night on Friday nights, and they would wait for this thing to drop and then watch it that night. And it just went viral and it went crazy. But it got to a point where I basically said, look, this is cool and it's a lot of fun, and I enjoy making these because it's kind of like a creative outlet for me, right? Meanwhile, keep in mind, I still had a full-time job as a CMO of this medical sales company, right? So this was just like on the side at nighttime or whatever. Anyway, I didn't.
And they didn't care about that?
Oh no, they did. We're getting there.
Okay.
We're getting there.
Okay.
That's why I threw that in.
Yeah.
It was getting to the point though where I was getting very, very loud about things, and my opinions at the time were not popular. Well, they were popular, but they weren't allowed to be popular. And so even though the people in my company agreed with what I was saying for the most part, because everybody out here for the most part is pretty conservative and have the same, general beliefs, I got sat down multiple times and I was told, look, if you're going to keep doing this, you cannot be the face of what's going to be a multi-billion-dollar business. And because that's what I was. I was literally the marketing face. They're like, you can't. And it just got to a point where I basically called them out and I said, look, I feel like you're just trying to kind of like let me play this out while you're slowly replacing me in the background because of my beliefs and because of what I'm not willing to not say. And I basically called them out and said, just rip the Band-Aid off. Like, let's just call it good. And so they were like, yeah, that's basically what's happened. So I was like, all right, peace. So I left. And so rewind a little bit before this, right? What I was going to say was I got to a point where I didn't want to just be this like conspiracy theory political talking head. Like there's so much of that, and I didn't want to be that. I didn't want my goal to build influence for so long to become this thing where I was just a talking head. I wanted to actually make a difference. And so during the lockdowns, I rallied everybody together to raise money for businesses that were going out of business. Ones like literally they were about to close their door one day to the next, and we would raise enough money and flood their doors with enough customers that they could stay open and are still open to this day. Several $100,000. And while this was happening, I realized that all these people, what they were doing was a patriotic act. They were being patriots. And I wanted everybody to represent that and be loud about it, but so many people were afraid to talk about it. They were afraid to share it or to get loud about it because they didn't want to get canceled. They didn't want to lose their jobs or lose their families or whatever.
At that time, Patriot, Prepper, like all of that came off as like a 3%er crazy guy that's got, a bunker and all. That's kind of what it came off.
It was being touted. Yeah, it was being touted on the mainstream media as domestic terrorism. I was on, dude, that's another conversation, but I was on multiple lists just for wearing the word Patriot on my shirt or on my hat. But anyway,
okay.
Well, so that's where it gets to, right? So basically what I did one day is I said, okay, if they don't want to talk about it, let's give them a way to represent it without talking about it. I have a buddy in town that runs a fulfillment company and has for a long time. And so I was like, hey, do you think you could help me create a t-shirt? And he was like, yeah. I was like, okay. So I made the Patriot tee. It was just a green t-shirt with the word Patriot on it. And at the time I was like, it'd be cool if we could get like 50 people to buy this, right? Like, who knows? And it just took off, dude. It just took off. And it like a few hundred within a couple days. And just every time I turned around, more people wanted it. And I'd be lying if I told you that I didn't use my marketing skills to be able to I did drops, right? And I would create that hype and create that scarcity mindset with the brand. And not the brand. It wasn't really a brand at the time, but with the product. And I made everybody want this Patriot tee. And it got to a point where then I was like, okay, now I understand something about building a brand. And the first thing that you need to understand about building a brand is that you have to make people feel like they're a part of it, right? It can't feel like they're just wearing something or doing something that is somebody else's. They have to feel like it's part of their collective identity. And so I created Patriot Friday. And to this day, every single Friday, people would buy the gear and they would wear it and post pictures and videos and tag our Instagram. At the time, it was just my Instagram. And they would use hashtag Patriot Friday. And it got to a point where it started with nobody doing it when I was trying to make it happen, right? And so what I would do is I would go find people's pictures that they posted with the gear, and I would screenshot it and post it and put the hashtag Patriot Friday and post it on my story. And sure enough, it started to catch on. And it got to a point, dude, where I couldn't keep up with how many people were posting and tagging. One of the coolest, most impactful moments of the brand, of building this brand, was one day, this was during Christmas. One day somebody sent me a video of their son. It was like an 8-year-old son opening up their gift on Christmas Day, and it was a Patriot hoodie. And he was stoked, dude. He ripped it open, just like, oh man. And I was like, I made that. Like, I made that here in Idaho. And I think it was like Wisconsin or something, way across the country. And this kid is opening this hoodie, and it's like, it's literally Christmas morning for him. And he loves it, right? Anyway, so still rewinding a little bit. This started to take off, dude. And it was like, people wanted hoodies, they wanted hats, they wanted kids stuff. And it became a thing. And we were bringing in tens of thousands of dollars in a weekend. And I was like, what the freak is going on, dude? And then that conversation came up, the one that I mentioned previously. And that's when I was like, you know what? People say, well, it was easy for you because you were making a lot of money on the side or whatever. It still wasn't easy, because let me tell you, the comfort that I had at that job, I could have been comfortable for the rest of my life. Those guys never would have let me go. I was invaluable to that company. And I was making close to or over 200 grand a year, traveling the world. I had not a care in the world. I could do whatever I wanted. I could work on my own terms. And I was set, dude. And I said goodbye to all of it because I felt called. As weird as that sounds, I felt called to do what I'm doing now. And I'll never forget that day, ever. I've talked about it so many times, but I'll do it again. I remember so vividly leaving the office and driving to Walmart, because that's where my wife was. She was shopping. It was just in the afternoon, and walking down the aisle and seeing her and telling her that I just left. I'm not going to say the company name, but I left. And I remember her saying, why do you not look worried? Like, why do you look and feel like, why are you so calm? And I remember just thinking, I don't know, but it just like, I think just because it feels right. Like I feel like a weight has been lifted, and I finally jumped. I've been trying to jump for so long, realistically, and I finally jumped. And it's because I felt like I was called to do it.
What year was that?
It was 2020. It was 2021. It was technically January of 2021.
Yeah. And
so I left, and I kept on building this momentum with the gear. And then in May, it became official Patriot Gear, which wasn't even the name I wanted to use. I wanted to use the name Patriot Gear. But it was taken. And so I used official Patriot Gear as a placeholder for a minute. And then people just saw it and caught on and started calling it that. And I was like, oh crap, I guess that's what it's called. So now it's called. So that's how official Patriot Gear came to be.
No, that's awesome. That's, there's a lot of key things in there. One, I mean, throughout all those years, it's not like you just came up with something and jumped ship, right? I think a lot of people that want to get into entrepreneurship, they're like, oh, it's a cool thing now. And, I can't understand how people are just leaving their jobs. It's like, well, in this case, this was years in the making, right? It wasn't something that you just decided, oh, I've got kids at home and a wife and things to take care of, I'm just going to leave. Like that's not how that works. And so you definitely had put yourself in a position where you were invaluable to this company, but they didn't value the same things that you did at that time. And And, whatever side people land on with the mask thing and all that, whatever, for me, my thing was, I'm not going to wear a mask, period. Right. That was my way of, I wasn't getting in people's faces and being upset about that, but it is the little things. Like my kids saw it and they were like, Dad, why don't you do that?
Yep.
I'm like, well, and then we just had that discussion of, and it wasn't, and this is where, like, I think a lot of people, even nowadays with whatever it may be nowadays, that you're all about Trump, or you're all about this or that. People should be able to have good discussions about things without getting up in arms about some topic. And I
For
think
sure.
we lost that during,
Yes.
and it might have been before that, but definitely during 2020, where people were like, "Oh, you're pro mask or anti mask. Oh, you're trying to kill little people," blah, and throwing all this stuff on. And I'm just sitting there like, why can't we just talk about this? Like, I mean, other
Yeah.
than the fact you don't want to be 6 feet away from me, like, or
Yeah.
whatever it was,
Yeah.
why can't we just talk about stuff? Why do we have to get so heated about everything every time someone dissents from what you think,
Yeah. Well, you said two things I want to tackle. The first thing, I'll just tackle this first. We as a society, we're guilty just as much as, I'm everybody's favorite conspiracy theorist still, right? I said that I didn't want to become the conspiracy theory talking head. That's still part of what I do. And so I'll just say, like, the powers that be, the puppet masters, whoever you believe that is, whatever that may be, I have my own theories, but there are definitely people who are pulling the strings of society, okay, and creating the ability to control us and to control the narrative, and therefore make policies and run the world the way that they want to. Like, there's no question about that. That's something that I very much believe. Now, whether or not it's a small group or a big group or a combination of things, or there's nuance to everything, right? But
and on that, I just have a prime example, and I know we kind of talked ahead of time. You're not necessarily a hunter or a huge, you enjoy getting outdoors, but you're not a hunter in that aspect. I talk about that a lot. Obviously,
Yep.
even the shirt itself.
Yeah.
But just a prime example of how up in arms, like how united, we literally united the granolas and the hunters over this public land issue that we're still fighting. But
Yeah,
the
dude.
big bill that they tried to slip in, the fact that we were able to unite people
And
that
get it taken out.
normally despise each other.
Yep.
And we're able to take that down within a matter of days. It wasn't even like we had weeks notice. It was, I was getting hit up by companies like, "Hey, can you share this? Hey, can we get on your podcast?"
I posted about it too.
Exactly. And
Yep.
and it blew up. And the fact that we were able to, in that instance, use social media in a good way to show the power of the people, blowing up the phone lines, sending emails, sending letters, all of that stuff. That's America.
That is America.
And
Yes.
that's really what it should be, where we should be able to have that discourse of, look, I don't agree with the hippies over here that just want to love every living thing and think that wolves are cute and cuddly and bears don't kill shit. And, they're just Baloo.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I don't agree with them on that. I like to kill those things. Right. And I like to eat those things, but we came together because of this main topic and because of politicians.
It was a common enemy. When you have a common enemy, so that's the thing, right? When you have a common enemy, it creates unity. But when you don't have that common enemy, it's nothing but divide.
We have to create
these people
our own
know that
problems.
They're constantly pushing narratives that don't allow us to have a common enemy. It instead creates the absence of that. And so what's happened is, and this is partly, we are also partly to blame. Like, I am not saying that this is all because of these powers that be or whatever. Like, we are also partly to blame as society. We have created a society that is so driven towards tribalism. And I have said this many, many times, tribalism is going to be our downfall, because you have groups of people that form based on an ideology, but it's not just about, okay, I believe this and I'm part of this group because we all believe the same thing. It's, we believe this, we're all part of this group, and we reject everything and anything outside of this belief system. And that's on both sides. It is not just the left. It is not just the right. It is both sides. And, you know, this is one reason, a lot of people are probably not going to like this, but this is one of the reasons why I did not hitch our wagon when it came to official Patriot Gear to MAGA, because I believe that MAGA has largely, when it first started, when the idea of making America great again first started, it was started for the right reasons, and it had the right sentiment and the right ideology, which is, dude, just like, yeah, let's make America great. Like, who doesn't want that, right? Make our cities great again, you know, build up the economy again, put us in a place where we're actually thriving and we can chase the American dream, make our school and our education systems better, get rid of this woke ideology that is permeating and quite frankly damaging you know, our children and the upcoming generation and all the different institutions. And like, that's a great ideal. Okay, but what has happened is it was hijacked, and instead of becoming a movement with a movement that has been driven by patriotism, it's become a cult that's driven by loyalism. And now, if you don't support a certain thing and you don't walk lockstep with every single thing that person or that group does, all of a sudden now you're a traitor, and now you're an enemy, and now you're this, and now you're that. And it's like, that is literally the same thing that the left does. It's the same. I mean, like, you've become everything you hate. But here's the thing:
what Hitler did. It was super easy. Like, it really, that's where it started. Was just, this guy you have to believe what he's saying.
That's right.
And you can't dissent. You can't say anything against that. And
that's right.
And that's I mean, that's why literally the First Amendment is.
Well, I mean,
speech, right?
Dude, we fought the loyalists. I mean, the way that I feel that people forget this, or they don't understand it, or they don't know history, but like, the Patriots fought the loyalists. It's not about being loyal to a leader or loyal to leadership. That's not patriotism. That's loyalism. And what has happened with this, you know, largely with this conservative movement, is it's become a lot of loyalism rather than patriotism.
Yep.
And
it's kind of ironic that it's red hats and red coats, you know, just
very,
throw that
it's
out there.
Very ironic. But here's the thing, like, I truly believe that the people that are pulling the strings know that this is happening, and this has been a slow strategy, and we've allowed it to happen little by little by little by little. And like, you know, again, this is why I made the decision to not become a part of that. The purpose and the mission of Official Patriot Gear from day one has been to remind people that patriotism is not a partisan thing. It is not exclusive to a group or an individual or a political party or a race or a religion. Patriotism is just the love of your country, the love of your people, and the desire to stand up for it and defend it, and wanting it, you know, and its freedom and its and the ability for it to thrive. Like, that's what patriotism is. It's not this weird twisted thing that all these different sides and versions, and like, it's been completely politicized and bastardized and weaponized. And
you having a sales background, I'll just relate this to anyone out there that is kind of in that sales as well. Like, every year you get used to change. There's always higher quotas. There's always raising the bar, whatever. Sometimes there's a lot, like right now, the company I work for is going through a lot of that private equity crap where they're flipping houses essentially, but with businesses, right? They're trying to make these huge changes real quick. I don't like it, but anyway, the change should be a good thing. And people that get stuck in their comfort, that's a problem. You should be able to have discourse. And I think it's just like the parents that don't like their kids asking why, because they don't have an answer. That's really why they don't like it. They don't like the kids peeling away the onion and finding out, oh, mom or dad doesn't really know the answer. Instead of taking that as a learning example, which I feel like us millennials have kind of learned from that, of at least the good parents in our generation, we've learned to, well, you know what? Actually, I don't know what that is, but guess what? We have Google, or we have DuckDuckGo, or whatever it is that you choose to use. Let's go look it up together.
Yeah.
And we'll go and take that time to do that with our kids, and I get to learn, the kids get to learn, etc. But, you know, we need to be able to have those conversations and be comfortable saying, dude, honestly, I don't have an answer to that. So maybe you've got me on this one, but I'm going to circle back on that once I go get to look it up. Because again, I personally don't like to hitch myself to things that I don't know. And I'll frequently say that, guys, I I haven't researched it. I can't have an opinion. This is what it sounds like right now, but I don't want to be on the record saying that until I'm knowledgeable about that. Right.
Well, and here's the thing too about that. Like, it's funny because people, I can't tell you how many times I'm like accused of being a grifter or whatever, right? And not that it matters at all. Like, at this point, it's just noise. But I will say it's so funny that people say that because, dude, my path with my brand has been far more difficult than any of these other brands that have chosen to hitch their wagon to MAGA or to become a political merch brand or whatever it may be, right? Throw the next slogan on your t-shirt and sell it. Make it about far right this or far right that or whatever. Dude, that's not hard. Like, I'm a marketer. I know how to sell. If I really wanted to make a grip ton of money off of people, that's what I would do. Because that's what makes money. The riches are in the niches, right? So, but I have purposely and insanely chosen to not do that and to stick to my guns about the message and the mission of this brand. And when people call me a grifter, I'm like, dude, if you only knew how much more difficult it's been to try and push a, quite frankly, centrist ideal than just catering to the masses and to the super extreme side. Like, it's that anybody in marketing or sales would tell you that that's the stupidest thing that you could do, that I'm an idiot for doing that, and that I should have done the opposite because I would be far better off. And I'll give you a perfect example. There was one point in time where I made a conscious decision to do this because I could have made a different decision and things would be completely different, even to this day, to be honest. And that is when the whole Let's Go Brandon FJB thing was going down. The amount of companies that threw that acronym on a t-shirt, FJB, that made hand over fist millions of dollars off of it, I can't even begin to tell you who they are. Or I can't tell you who they are. I can't even begin to tell you how much they made. And I won't tell you who they are because I'm not about, this. That's not what this is about. But and to be frank, like, I'm also not. Some of these people are good people. Like, they were just doing what they want, what they felt like they need to do for their families, and whatever. Like, to each his own. But I made a decision. I was tempted not to, but I made a decision in that moment not to do it. And bro, when I tell you I could have made millions of dollars off of that line, I'm not exaggerating.
Yeah.
And instead, I took a massive hit. And honestly, our brand took a back seat that year. It took a back seat to a lot of other companies that are now out of business. And we are still going. Why? Because when you build a brand off of loyalism and a cult, it dies with whatever that cult and that loyalism is attached to. But I built a brand off of patriotism and a movement that doesn't go away no matter who's in office and no matter what leadership is there and no matter what's happening in our country. You are never going to not have people that love our country and want the best for it. And that's patriotism.
Well, and this to me speaks to the kind of salesman that you were and are still, right? People that are genuinely good salesmen, not the used car sales guy, not the greasy hair, not the, that kind of guy. You're not jumping from trend to trend. You understand that there's going to be ebbs and flows, right? Of years, you're going to have great years. You're going to have, but as long as your base, and for me anyway, I prefer it this way, if my base and my high are more even keel rather than super high highs and super low lows. And that just, again, speaks to who you are as a person, but also obviously the brand you're trying to build. But you as a person, you're okay with that. Your pride's not tied up in, I need to be the number one this time because my values are, or my morals are more valuable to me than the paycheck.
Well, and it's really funny you say that, dude, because it actually is it completely relates to my previous career in door-to-door sales. So in the door-to-door industry, it is a very common practice for sales reps to jump ship, like you talked about, to go company to company to company, like just basically go all over the place and jump companies. Because what happens is these companies will offer these sales reps that are successful at one company a massive sign-on bonus. and they'll give them the highest pay scale or whatever. And so this idea that the grass is greener on the other side is very, very prevalent in the sales industry. One thing about me is I never left that company. I worked with that company from day one and I never left once. They tried to poach me every single year, multiple companies, over and over and over and over. And I never left because of what you're talking about. And in addition to that, it's even funnier that you said about being number one or whatever. Dude, I was never actually the top rep in the entire time that I knocked doors. And I will tell you, and people can say whatever they want, it is not because I couldn't be. It is because, number one, I didn't care enough to be when I was doing it. And number two, I wasn't willing to do what a lot of those top reps did. Mm-hmm. And one of the reasons why I also stayed with the same company in the same industry is because I didn't have to lie to sell it. There's a lot of products out there that when you sell door to door, even if you're not lying, you have to bend the truth a little bit to be able to get it, to be able to do it at a high level. With TV, all I was doing was going into someone's home, and most people already had TV. Okay. So all I was doing was going to somebody and saying, hey, you already have this product. I can offer it for cheaper or better quality. And this is the process. And this is all you have to do. And then just trust me that I'm going to take care of it for you and I'm not going to rip you off. And that's why I sold at a high level, because I didn't have to lie to people. I was selling a product that people already needed. It was just a matter of explaining to them, it's not as good. This is the problem. I can solve it. And this is how I'm going to solve it. Right. And so it's funny you bring that up, because I've probably made that connection in my mind before, but I never really it never really hit like it just did. Everything I did in that previous industry, I carried on to being an entrepreneur. I have chosen not to jump ship and just go with what will make the most money and sell my integrity to do it. And I've chosen to be in an industry where I'm able to give somebody something that means something to them, something that they already believe in, but I'm just able to provide them something that's better that they believe in, right? Like, I mean, replace the MAGA shirt for a Patriot shirt, right? Replace the idea that you're supporting one man and one presidency and all the decisions that he makes. Replace it with the idea that you're supporting everybody around you that just wants the country to be a great country, no matter who's in office, and that wants us to thrive as a nation, and is grateful for the sacrifices that have been made. That's what Patriot is, right? Exactly. I've done exactly what I did in the past right now, and I continue to do it. And it's really cool that it, like I said, I probably made that connection before, like subconsciously, but like it really hit just now. And I would tell everybody that's the lesson. That's the lesson. Like every single one of you at some point in your life are going to receive a call, or you're going to receive multiple calls. Because I've received far more than just one call. But what matters is whether or not you are ready and able and willing to receive that call and do what you're supposed to do with it. Because here's the thing, if you don't and you aren't ready, someone else will receive that exact same call. And that's happened multiple times throughout my life. And it will go to the person who is willing to do it the right way. I believe that.
And yeah, for sure. And that definitely gets into, faith and things that I believe firmly of. People talk about, I mean, what's the term? Your soulmate, things like that. I'm like, honestly, I think there's probably multiple people I could be happy with for eternity, but this is the choice that I made because of XYZ circumstances. God doesn't just put one person on this earth that could, Moses could have been a number of kids, right? And it just happened to be Moses' circumstances built him to be the person he was, and then he made the decision to do what he did, right? There's so many things that, you can do better than I can, and vice versa. And then my neighbor can do better than me, or maybe they're better than me than this and that. And it's just something that I think a lot of people get wrapped up in their head, that they think they are the only person that can do X, Y, Z. No, it's just, are you more prepared in this moment or not?
Yeah. And dude, I mean, again, it's so funny if you actually go back and look for those of you who have done a lot of different things, like I've done a lot of different things, you know, and there's always a parallel that can be drawn through all of it. You know, prior to becoming an executive in door to door, and while I was in college, another thing I did was I ran an event business. I threw massive 2,000, 3,000 kid raves when EDC was kind of becoming a thing, right? And organize these events and put this all together. So there was actually a point in time when I was in the door-to-door industry where I recognized the need for a convention. Like the door-to-door industry did not have a convention. And so I literally one day came up with an entire blueprint for what would be called D2D Con, and how to run this event, how to build it from the ground up, how to push it throughout, you know, all the different industries and everything, and the mission of it and all this. And I literally had an audio recording talking about how I wanted to run it. And hold on one second. Sorry. One second.
You're good.
So is also in the store. So customers, very loud ones.
There you go. There you go.
Anyway, so I came up, I had a full audio recording about exactly how I was going to run this. I picked out the first speakers, like everything to the detail. Okay. Sure enough, I sat on this for a year. I never did anything with it. I sat on it for a year. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I see a post pop up one day on Facebook. I'm thinking about starting a convention, D2D Con. This is how it's going to be, blah, 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 blah. And I kid you not, dude. I'm not exact. I literally have it, all the proof still. It was exactly what I had planned. There was a few things that were different, like how they wanted to scale it and stuff, but everything else was exactly to the detail the same. And I remember getting a hold of this guy's number that came up with the idea and sending him a message and saying, dude, I said, you're probably going to get this all the time, but I literally had the exact same idea that you did, almost to the same details. And he was like, yeah, right, whatever. And I sent him the audio recording that I made one day, like planning it out in my head. And he's like, holy crap, dude, you're not kidding. And so I actually ended up working with him and speaking at the first 4 of them.
That's awesome.
But it's just proof, dude. It's proof that if you don't receive the calling and you're not willing and able at the time, it will be given to someone else who is.
Or if you hesitate, you know, when you've got, it
is clear proof, dude, you know? So anyway.
Exactly. No, I couldn't agree with you more. And man, honestly, there's so many things that you look back on, and obviously things happen for a reason. Most of the time you don't know why in the moment. You look back on it and you're like, okay, well, that makes more sense now. But that's really cool. And honestly, the whole official Patriot Gear, you know, I grew up in the South. I grew up in North Carolina. And now when I go back, and there's certain areas that I see people, you know, flying the rebel flag and things like that, which people, if they dive into history, will understand what that flag actually is.
Made it out to be.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I always joke with, you know, people that I can joke, because some people get real fired up about it. Oh, South will rise again, crap, all that BS. Yep. And as they're sitting on their couch drinking beer with beer bellies and, you know, living off of welfare. Yep. South ain't rising nowhere, guys. Yep. But no, you know, when I do talk to people, I'm like, oh, well, the South flag is surrender, but you know, so it's a white one. You guys got the wrong colors up there, but in reality, you know, people get tied to these things and they don't even know why most of the time. They hear something cool, but they don't want to go and do the research, which is super ironic because you don't even have to go to the library anymore. Just go Google it and make sure it's a reputable source, right? But get multiple sources and don't just go believe Wikipedia, right? Go get multiple sources and figure out what you actually believe. And if it's something that you really want to, like yourself, you're very outspoken about a lot of hot topics, but you go into it and you are willing to have conversations with anyone about it because you've hitched yourself to your beliefs because of your research and you're confident in having that discussion. And then, you know, again, it's just the same reason why I stay away from those kind of things generally on a podcast, or even I don't go in and talk about it on my social media a lot because it's just not. I don't know. It takes a lot of work, to be honest with you. Like if people want to have a conversation with me about it, I'll be like, okay, well, here's how I feel about it, yada yada. But
so can I challenge you a little bit on that?
Yeah.
So like, here's the thing, right? What is the worst thing that could happen as far as like, if you consider we're actually in a war for truth, what is the number one thing that could be the downfall of actually getting the truth out there?
Well, it's just like what we were
There's
talking
that
about
quote,
earlier.
right?
Yeah, but it's like what we were talking about earlier, where it's essentially, it's not sinning by omission, but like you're letting things go and not
It's just being
participating.
silent.
Yeah, being silent, not participating in it.
It's
just
being silent.
bad.
If you feel, now, here's the thing though, you have to, if you feel like you should speak up and you don't, that's you choosing to be silent. But if you don't feel like you need to, then, you know, that may just be, it's nothing. But I would just challenge you and say this. You said something earlier that was really interesting, and you said it again just now, which is, if I don't know everything there is to know about this topic, I'm not going to speak on it. I'm not going to share my opinion because I don't want that to be on the internet, right? Bro, here's the thing. I think, especially now going into this era of like AI and real people being replaced by artificial people, because that's what's happening. And it's going to happen more and more and more, and it's going to be a crazy 5
people
to 10
didn't
years.
watch iRobot sometimes.
Seriously though. So think about this, right? So what I'm getting at is, I think one of the number one things that make people authentic and genuine and are creating a base that, once again, I feel like I have a pretty good knack of seeing, you know, what's to come, not like prophecy or whatever, but just like understanding trends, right?
Patterns, yeah.
And patterns, yes. And I will say that the people right now that are being completely and totally authentically themselves, no matter what, and are willing to be wrong and say, hey, I was wrong about this, but this is now what I believe here. I believe that those are the people that are actually going to end up having a voice at the end, like at the end of the day, because it shows that you're real. When you're willing and able to speak on any topic just based on the opinion that you have, because guess what? The idea that people can't speak just because they can't share their opinion unless it's like, rooted in facts or whatever, that's bullcrap, dude. Freedom of speech is freedom of speech. Every single human being has the right to share their opinion about anything. People follow me on social media not because I am a perfect news source. Like, I get things right a lot of the time, but it's because of my opinion and because of what I believe and because of what I do and my actions, right? But I am absolutely the type of person that's like, if I get it wrong, I'm going to say it, right? And I'm going to always try my best to be as authentic as I possibly can. And what that means to me is being willing to share my opinion and course correct if I need to later. And just stand on what I actually believe. I believe that the people that don't do that, the people that just constantly say what people want to hear, or they just stay silent because they're afraid to share that opinion. I mean, dude, that's not helping either. And it's not helping them, like I said,
right.
because then you just become another cog in the wheel. And it's like, if you want to just be a cog in the wheel, that's fine. But if you want to be a leader, people look to leaders as somebody who's willing to stand on principles and get things right and get things wrong. The best leaders in the world get things wrong all the time, but they're willing to say, hey, I was wrong, and learn from their mistakes and move on, right? You can't make a mistake if you're not willing to put yourself out there. And so, I think that is a big shift that we're seeing with people is no more of the days of these talking heads that only say what people want to hear. Everybody has recognized that as just straight propaganda, especially since a lot of them are just paid to say what they're saying. Or they refuse to say something outside of the norm because they're afraid of losing the influence that they've built based on only ever speaking inside the norm, right? But you look at these people that have been able to build influence based on all different kinds of opinions and all different kinds of perspectives and just being open to having that conversation. I think those platforms are far more powerful and are far more influential. And
I would agree.
Yeah.
I would agree with you. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, my suggestion for anybody that is listening to this is dude, if you have thoughts and you have opinions, freaking put them out there. People don't follow, they follow people. People are looking for people to follow, and they're looking for people that are real, because we are steamrolling ahead into a world where most of the things you see are not going to be
Yeah.
real. Will become the currency.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. It's, and I guess maybe I misspoke, but not necessarily having to know everything, but having enough that you care enough about it to say something, right? Like, I mean, I had a discussion, just going back to the whole jab thing. I had a discussion with my mom, which she's an RN. She works at Primary Children's Hospital now. She's at a different hospital, but she's been a nurse my entire life that I can remember. We would line up at her door every flu season and get the flu shot, and in our home, because she'd bring them home and do that. So I grew up with that way. And, my wife was a little bit different, did I can't remember what they called it, but essentially where you schedule out the vaccines that your kids get, or immunizations. I always get the two mixed up, but either way, the ones that your kids are supposed to get when they're born. My mom was kind of shocked that we didn't just give them all at once. And I was like, hey, I learned a little bit from my wife, who is definitely not medically minded, but it made sense. And then I went and looked it up, and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, 100% schedule it out so we're not overloading their immune system all at once. And then, the jab came around, and my mom was like, okay, so are you going to do this for the kids? I'm like, no, why? Like, we're outside hiking and very active family. We don't have health issues, known health issues, and she was kind of taken aback, and I was kind of shocked. I was like, oh, hold on.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Mom, like, I know you live this. This is literally your life as being an RN. But we had that discussion. That was a little rough for a little bit. And but my wife and I were on the same page. And obviously that's the most important person when it comes to making decisions for the kids. And so it's just something that I would agree. I am definitely not as outspoken as you are in the face of things like this. But
Which,
I
don't get me
do.
wrong, you don't have to be. I'm
Right.
just saying.
No. I'm just saying that I'm definitely not that way. But when it comes to people, I'm definitely more of the, and I'm sure you're this way too, when you're actually in a room, not in front of a screen or doing what
Far
you do
more
best.
introverted.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. You sit back in a room, you sit back and you listen and you observe. You come off as that kind of person to me. And that's definitely how I am, as well. As I'll sit back, and sometimes my wife's like, you okay? I'm like, I'm just watching, just listening, seeing who I actually want to hang out with and who I actually want to interact with, kind of deal.
Yeah,
And,
dude, I'm the guy with the RBF in the back of the room.
yeah, with your arms folded. And yeah, I get asked if I'm a cop or ex-military all the time, because
all the time.
That's just, yeah. And I'm just like, no, I'm just observant. Right. But when it does come to my kids or my community, or again, something big like public land, I'm like, all right, all in on this, because this is what I'm willing to plant my flag on. Right. And so I definitely agree with you there. Like, don't be afraid to have those discussions, but also don't go into it fighting the way that a lot of these people do online, where they're just speaking trends, or even in person, like people that walked around with masks but didn't know why, and didn't know what was the proper mask. If you were going to mask up, what was the proper mask to use? A piece of cloth is not going to do anything but make you rebreathe your own smelly breath. So, like, things like that. Be educated, but you don't have to know everything. And then also speak educatedly, or whatever the word is. Don't go at them with violence and aggression. Like, hear their argument if you want to, and say, okay, cool, I disagree, and maybe it's not worth your time to speak to them. Or if it actually is worth your time, have that discussion. But again, don't fight that fire with that kind of fire, if that makes sense. Like, don't be emotional about it per se. Be educated when you do have those discussions.
Well, and this kind of takes things full circle, but like, to your point, or to this whole point of what I believe makes you capable to speak up and to be strong when it's time to be strong, and not be fearful, and not be like these people that just kind of do what people tell them to do. It all comes down to become formidable. Like, the most important message out of all of this podcast and anything else could be, if you really want to make a difference, because dude, let's just be honest. Yes, we did a lot to change the policy when it came to the land grab, right?
Yeah.
Like,
well, kind of.
We proved once again that the ants can actually outpower the crickets or locusts or whatever they are, grasshoppers.
I love that movie.
If we stick together and if we actually get vocal. Has it been completely solved? No, not at all. But like, at the end of the day, how much control do we actually have over most of the things that we talk about? We don't have a whole lot. And I think that my overall message all the time is, even if you can't control this, it's important to be aware of it, but not to allow that awareness to completely overpower you and consume you. It's being aware but not consumed. And the way you do that is by focusing on the things you can control, and this is kind of the, beating the dead horse thing or whatever, but like, it can't be overstated. Focus on your health, focus on your physical health, your mental health, your emotional health. Put yourself in the best position possible and become the best version of you possibly can, so that you're able to be there for the people that matter the most to you, your family, your friends, your community. That's ultimately what needs to happen. And when people say, well, then what is your solution, right? Like, everything you seem to share, you seem to be like the black pill or whatever. It's like, what is the solution then? That is the solution. That is the solution. No matter who's in power, no matter who's running the country, no matter what craziness is happening, just put yourself in the best position possible personally and take care of the people around you. And, I think that the people that choose to do that are the ones that are like, that can actually stand up to the manipulation and the obvious tactics that are put on them, because they can see right through it. It's the people that just kind of go along with the flow and allow themselves to become an NPC or a pawn or whatever, that when that stuff comes around, they're completely helpless. They're completely like, that's it. They'll jump. You say jump. They say, I used to say, and I still say this honestly, if tomorrow the government were to come out and say, there's this crazy virus and it only can affect you 4 feet off the ground, I want you to think about how many people would be down on their hands and their knees tomorrow. It's a pretty scary thought.
Oh yeah. No,
but it's a reality.
I agree.
I sure as hell won't be.
No, definitely not. Yeah. Yeah. But and the other thing, I always tell, my wife has said a couple times, maybe you should run for community, whatever. I'm like, look, the best way personally I'm going to have an effect, and I think everyone can have an effect, is, like you said, start with yourself. If you have kids, that's the next step. And they're going to see your example, but also having them be raised where you actually, when they get home from school, if they do go to school, they're not homeschooled, you ask them how their day went. And if they say good or fine, you don't stop there, and ask better questions. That's your job as a parent. Because what kid, or when you get home from work and you walk in and your wife's like, how's your day? Good. Like, that was kind of a shitty question, honestly. You can kind of read the room when you walk into the house, or when the kids walk in, they're exhausted. Their brains are drained. They want a snack. They want water. They want to go watch a show or whatever, or maybe they have tons of activities, whatever. One of my favorite questions, and I learned this from my wife as well, is, what was your favorite part about today?
It's a great question.
And then also, what was something that made you feel uncomfortable, or what was the bad part about your day today? And those usually spark conversations that, while we're driving to activities, because our kids are very active, or they do have a moment to sit down, or we're sharing that after school snack, whatever, it brings up more of a conversation than just, how was your day? You can kind of tell by the way the kid comes home from school how their day was. Ask better questions as a parent.
Great.
Then
great advice. Yeah.
And then from there, build your community. What can you do? Do you even know your neighbors?
Yeah.
Do you even know who they are? So get to know your neighbors. Have block parties or whatever. Have their kids over. Have your kids, get to know the parents so you're comfortable with them going over there, etc. And then build out from there. Like, honestly, when a president gets elected, Democrat, Republican, whatever, I look at my wife, I'm like, well, that dude's a fucking idiot. But guess what? Guess what? So was the last one, and the last one, and the last one. And so how does it really affect me?
Yeah. And I mean, dude, like, you know, here's the thing too. A lot of people, ever since I started calling Trump out for things, they're like, oh, well, this is what it's like, dude, believe me, I'm still happier that it's him and not the freaking alternative, you know, like real talk.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's great advice. And you know what, to that point, I've kind of had a little bit of a rude awakening myself as far as community goes. And my new thing now is so I don't know if you know this, but I've been involved in flood relief for both West North Carolina and now Texas, Kerrville, Texas. And what I realized, dude, is most of these communities, as incredible as it is when they do come together, because when these floods go down, like the amount of community strength that you see, people just coming together and doing everything they possibly can for their people, and you know, just doing anything and everything to take care of one another. It's honestly really cool and really inspiring to watch. But it's also kind of sad because it's like, why does it take a natural disaster for our communities to actually come together like that, to become so tight knit and so loving and so supportive and do so much for each other? Why does it take the natural disasters to do that? And honestly, I don't know the answer. And I wish I did, because if I did, man, I would make it a mission of, and maybe I just haven't done this yet, but like I would make it a mission of mine to figure out how to bring my community together like that without the natural disaster.
Yeah, I've got a guesstimate, and this is just from my observation, is just people don't want others to see their weaknesses. And so if you let them into your home, they're going to see you have a dirty house because you have kids. If you let them into they let you into their backyard, they're going to see it's not as clean or as prime as the front yard. You know,
the Joneses kind of goes, the whole idea of the Joneses goes out the window when a flood hits. It's true.
Exactly.
Because everybody's on a level playing field at that point.
And that's why for me, like, you know, I kind of call my wife out on this a little bit. She's like, and I found out it's for her, not necessarily other people around us. She likes to have a very clean home. I'm like, babe, I think this is very clean. You know, like we have kids, and not to mention, I love in the summertime that I get to work from home. Probably not as productive at work as I should be, but my kids know they can invite their friends over. It's kind of a protective measure for me. I know the parents, so I'm cool with them going over to most kids' houses, but I also like the kids to come here. We have regularly scheduled Friday nights. It's not necessarily the healthiest thing. My wife calls me out on that, but we have pizza every Friday night, kind of a little mini block party for the kids.
Right. I know. And you're good. You can have pizza.
I know. But I'm saying, like, the idea of it is we get the kids together. They play football in the front yard. Sometimes we go to the park if the mosquitoes aren't crazy.
It's something that's been lost.
Yeah. But we do that with our community. One of the main kids that come over is, and we live in a very LDS neighborhood, right? And this couple is a lesbian couple. And until we started, like, I coached their kids. That's how I actually found out they lived in our neighborhood. Years ago, I coached the T-ball team, and they were twins, and I noticed they had two moms, right? And I'm like, okay, cool. Yeah, it's not normal for Utah per se. And so I made an effort.
That's an opportunity
right, not in an awkward way, but I made an effort to say, hey, you guys live in this area. This is where we live. Hey, Asher would love, he gets along with your sons.
It's an opportunity to let them feel accepted and welcome.
Right. And ever since then, we can't, like, we're always either, we introduce them to jujitsu because Asher went. And so before they had these travel teams that they're on now, they were in jujitsu for almost 2 years with my son, and we would carpool. And it's just created this community that I feel like and that's something that I felt called to do, talking about being called. Like, I noticed that's going really around, cool, people don't do home teaching. People don't, even though it's like 2 houses down. There's, you know, like, but it is, for me, it's build your own community the way that you want, you know. And maybe selfishly, I'm like, my kids have friends. I know someone that's a plumber. I know someone that's an electrician. I know someone that can repair cars, and they know I'm the guy with the guns. So, and I can hunt and kill food. Right. So I've built this really community. Cool. And so that's what I recommend people do. And you have to do that yourself sometimes rather than waiting on your neighbor to come over. Right.
Sure. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, no, that's good. It's great. I mean, that's awesome. And honestly, we need more of that. And like you were mentioning earlier, I've had a lot of people too ask me, are you ever going to run for office? Or you should. I've had multiple people now tell me you should run for office here in town, and I'm just like, maybe one day, but at this point, man, I'm like, I don't want anything to do with politics. And like, I can do so much more damage in the private sector than I could if I try to run up against these, bought and paid for. I have no desire. I mean, I've seen my buddy Ian go through it. I've seen multiple people go through it. And it's like, I just don't want to open that Pandora's box. I don't have any desire to be in politics. I want to try and make a difference where I can and when I can. But that's a great way to do it, man. That's awesome. It's good. It's good. Good job.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
That's what it's all about. It starts in the community.
Yeah. Yeah. Yourself, your immediate family, and then your community. And then, you know what? Honestly, like, unless they're dropping nukes, I've really come to find out it's not, you shouldn't get so wrapped up again. Like, obviously vote and voice your opinion, but you shouldn't have a miserable 4 years because of who's in the presidency.
Yeah.
Because of that one fact, right?
Yeah.
You should make your life the way it is. And yeah, that's going to suck. There's some things that are awful. This is going to suck, or this is going to be really good those 4 years, whatever. But your identity should not be wrapped up in that.
No, absolutely not. That's the message that, like I said, that's the message I always shared, where it's like, be aware, but don't be consumed. Aware, but not consumed.
Yep.
That's
exactly
because too many people allow it to just completely consume everything, every thought, every action. Like, I get people all the time that ask me, how is it that that you do these deep dives and that you understand that you're aware of all this evil? Like, how do you sleep at night? And and it's just like, I just don't let it consume me. Like, I recognize the things I have control over, and I recognize the things I don't have control over. And while I'm aware of these things, I don't let that just completely control my life. Like, at the end of the day, I don't know. Maybe it's a skill that I have that a lot of people don't have. And maybe that's why I'm able to do what I do. Yeah. I'm able to compartmentalize things. Like, I feel like, I don't know. It's never been something that's been like a hindrance for me. It's always been kind of a strength, where it's like, okay, I'm aware and I like to be aware, but it doesn't bring me down. And if I ever feel like it is bringing me down, then I cut. Like, there's been multiple times where I'm like, all right, this is too much. I'm just going to take a break. I'm going to go off social media for a week, and I feel like you just need to be in tune with yourself.
Yep.
And
take hints from people that genuinely matter. If your wife's like, hey, I've noticed this, like, don't take offense to that. Be like, shit, maybe I shouldn't.
Be like, if she's noticing, there's probably something there. Yeah.
Or your kids, even your kids will drop little hints here and there. And, listen to them.
Yeah, dude, I'll tell you what, the first time that your little boy says, hey, Dad, can I have a hug? And then I go to hug him and he says, no, but not with your phone in your hand. I'll tell you what, that's a wake-up call. That happened like a year ago. And I was like, oh my gosh, I wasn't looking at my phone either. I was just holding it. But he was like, he recognized it. He was like, no, both hands, Dad, put your phone down. I was like, holy crap. My kid's 5.
Yep.
It's like, dang, that's powerful. That hits, right? That was a lesson learned that I have not forgotten, and that I have definitely course corrected because of, believe it or not, guys, if you're listening to this and you have kids and they've never done that before, the time is coming, because they do notice.
Yep. No, that's powerful. But yeah, listen to, and it's funny that a 5-year-old's opinion matters so much, but it does, because you want the best life for them, and they are little mini versions of you to some degree. So
for sure.
Yep. No, that's awesome. Well, cool. Is there anything else that we haven't hit on that maybe you want to touch on?
So, I mean, what is the overall, like, is it mainly, it's overall like entrepreneurship and stuff like that, or just kind of everything?
Yeah.
Because from an entrepreneur standpoint, I think there's one more point that I want to touch on that I think is really important, and a lot of people kind of forget. And it goes back to what you were talking about, how I didn't just jump ship, and like, I didn't just like abandon everything and start something else. Right. A lot of people out there, especially the gurus, will tell you to do that. They'll tell you, just jump, just do it. And it's like, don't do
If you
that.
buy my online training.
Yeah, don't do that. Okay. The best thing that you can do is close one door while you open another, but do not walk through that other door until the other one is completely closed. And I believe that the best way to identify when it's time to start closing a door and it's time to start opening a new one is by chasing fulfillment. Okay, so fulfillment simply this is just my opinion, but the way I look at fulfillment is when I feel like there's nothing really, like there's no holes. I feel like everything is like, I feel good. I feel fulfilled. I feel like I'm doing what I'm meant to be doing. I don't feel like anything's missing. That to me is fulfillment. And throughout my entire life, every single time I have made a pivot, whether it was from events to sales, from knocking doors to managing, from managing to training, from training to building the training platform, from doing that to doing marketing, from marketing to this, from this to that, every single time, the trigger that I have looked for has been fulfillment. Do I feel fulfilled or do I feel like something's missing? And every single time I have felt like something is missing, it meant one of two things. It meant one thing. I needed to pivot. And where I pivot, it either meant I needed to pivot within the same place I was or pivot to something completely different. Okay. And I feel like if you as an entrepreneur or, whatever, if you go off of that, maybe it's just me in my life, like take this for what it's worth. It's just my opinion, but like throughout my life, I have never gone wrong if I've followed that strategy. When I feel like something is missing and I feel like I'm not fulfilled, I start looking as to where I should pivot, whether it's where I currently am or completely different place. And I've never gone wrong. And every time I've made that pivot, if I do it in a way where I'm able to close one door before I open another, it's been right every time. Like, as I look back, I'm like, that was the right move to make. That was the right move to make. I have never made a wrong move following that strategy. And to this day,
I love that.
Things are never going to be perfect, but like, I believe that is ultimately what, whether you believe in God or not, that's what I believe God wants for us. He wants us to be fulfilled. And he does a really good job at helping us to feel when we're not, and to feel when we're not on the right track and we need to get on the right track if we're willing and able to listen.
Yep. No, I love that. I would agree. And that's definitely the key right there. What you just said, willing and able to listen. You got to be willing to, us as LDS, Mormons, whatever people want to call us, understand that still small voice, what that phrase is, but essentially when the Spirit is speaking to you, it can be in a variety of ways. And you need to be willing to listen. That's essential. I mean, it's just like if someone calls you out on something and you blow them off, you're not willing to listen to that moment, and that person could be 100% right, but guess what? You didn't want to listen. So you didn't get to take advantage or benefit from that situation.
That's right.
Yep. Yeah. No, I couldn't agree with you more. So I appreciate that, Ian. And I guess, where, obviously we've talked about official Patriot Gear, but where can people find you guys?
Yeah. So the official Patriot Gear is our Instagram page. I believe that's also Patriot. I think it's Patriot Gear is our Facebook page. Mostly Instagram though. That's our biggest platform is Instagram, the official Patriot Gear. My personal page is iWenster on Instagram. That's my biggest platform. X, same exact thing. Probably my second. No, Facebook is definitely my second biggest platform, and that's just Ian Wendt. X is iWenster. Officialpatriotgear.com is our website. That's where you can get all the gear. We also have a few different stores. So we have one in Rexburg, Idaho. We have one in Sandy, Utah, shops at Southtown. And we're about to have one in Cape Coral, Florida. And that's about. Oh, and my podcast. I mean, I started it a few months ago, so I'm not used to announcing it. But the Ian Wendt Show is on YouTube and Apple and Spotify, and there's some pretty cool episodes. The last episode was crazy. I don't know if you saw it, but I interviewed the lead detective for the Doomsday Murders, the Daybell case.
I actually just barely started that last night while I was doing some editing. So
wild.
Yeah.
So yeah. Anyway, no man,
like
I
said,
appreciate
heavy topics.
you
If you guys are into that, the heavy topic stuff, I would definitely recommend that. It definitely is eye opening to some of the people that you've had on so far.
Yeah, the first guest especially.
Oh yeah, for sure. But yeah, with that, I'm going to leave all those links down below. If you guys have any other questions for Ian, definitely reach out to him or go grab a Patriot tee. They've also got, if you're into ARs, they've got the Mag of the Month Club.
We do have the Mag Club. Yes.
Yeah. Definitely go check that out.
The website is under construction, but
yes. Yeah. Sweet. Well, cool. Well, again, Ian, I appreciate you taking time out of your day. I know you've got a lot going on, and obviously family and business and everything else. So definitely appreciate it. And for all you guys out there, again, links will be down below where you can go follow Ian, my fellow ginger. If you guys are if you like redheads, the only thing that would be different is maybe I shouldn't make that joke. Never mind. I won't make that joke. All right.
Yes,
with that being said, guys, like I always say, get out, live your life, and love it.